How about now? Anything there? Yep, it looks like we may have come online. Do we have sound now? And I don't know sign language. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Um, but for some reason the mic wasn't picking up. So anyway, yeah, we're back. I was going to say, what I was saying in the beginning was I've got the Wits End Turbo kit at the shop and the truck it's going in, and we started pulling the motor out today for the rebuild, or yesterday. So, yeah, we should have turbo install updates coming soon. And thanks to Steven on here, I also got the prototype bends back from the Mandrel Bending shop. Um, So on our stainless exhaust, the tailpipes can be one piece instead of me having to do all of the cut and bend and weld. So those are back. I just need the fixture for that, and we'll be ready to rock with the updated 80 series exhaust, which should clear auxiliary fuel tanks. I got a local guy coming by to double check that. Hmm. I'm not sure why I sound funky. My laptop did a whole bunch of Windows updates, and the broadcasting software I'm running did an update as well as I fired everything up, which is why I was late getting going. So I don't know if I need to go back and tweak settings, um, but I will do that after chat. And yes, Dave, I'm gonna do turbo install videos. It'll be a bit because we've still got to get the machine work done on the head. Uh, Machine work done, and then put the engine together before I do the turbo kit. And yeah, our internet here at the house has been really slow the last couple of days. I think they're changing the node over at the end of the street. Um, so yeah, I'm guessing that's part of it. And yep, head is back to normal. I didn't use the green screen last week, and people seemed to like the zoomed out look better. And I was late getting back home from the shop today, so I didn't bother with the green screen or anything like that. Um, and yeah, and Steven was a lifesaver because it saved me like a 5 hour round trip running up to the exhaust shop. And the bends look really good. I've got them hanging out on the floor at the shop. Um, yeah, that's all the new and exciting. I may have to bounce back and forth off of here today. One of our dogs had surgery yesterday, and she's got to go out on a leash for the next 10 days. So if she decides she needs to go out, I got to leash her up and take her. So I may have to bounce off of here. So heads up, that may happen. Um, yeah, other than that, whatever questions you guys have got, just let me know. Awesome. Glad the head gasket's holding. That's always my biggest fear when we do a head gasket is, we'll pinch the gasket or do something and it'll have a leak afterwards. And it hasn't happened yet, but yeah, I'm always scared it's going to happen. And awesome that a new air fuel meter fixed idle and codes. We luckily haven't run across having to replace an airflow meter yet. feel like there was something else new and exciting that I was going to mention. And I can't. Oh yeah, that's what it was. Capital Land Cruiser Club had their annual swap meet this past weekend, and it was a huge turnout. I haven't been in a couple of years, um, but it was a super awesome turnout with like a ton of trucks. MMA says change the inner tie rods on the LX470 and now it makes a squeaking sound as if the brakes are going bad. Didn't sound like this before though. Any ideas? I don't have any good thoughts on that. I'm not sure, unless somehow in the changing of them you got some kind of fluid or something on, on the brake rotors. And Timothy says slow leak from input and output shaft of the transfer case. How difficult is it to fix? In an 80 series, the T-case output seals are not fun. Like the older trucks, there was a big nut that held the pinion on, or the drive flange on. You took the nut off, pulled the flange off, and you could just put a new seal in, put everything back together. The 80 series output shafts are snap ringed from the inside of the case. So it basically means pulling the whole case apart to get to its snap rings to get down there. So it's not a particularly fun fix. So unless it's really leaking, I would probably just monitor the fluid levels and keep an eye on it until it starts like really leaking. And Dave wants to know if the header heat shields really do anything. They probably do something, but by this point, half of them have rotted off of trucks. A good half of them we see don't have the heat shields anymore, and nobody's complained of overheat issues between the two. So I don't think they do enough that you would notice them missing, unless you were in like a super hot climate. Oh, and awesome that changing the diverter valve, or bypassing the diverter valve for the rear washer, fixed the. I always forget that valve is in there. It's tucked away and hidden. But yeah, good catch. An EP11 wants to know if you can do the valve shims for cylinder 6 with the special tool, or if there's not enough room and you have to remove the cams on an 80 series. I honestly don't know. I've never actually used the valve shim tool while the engine was in the truck. The few times I've had to shim, I had the engine on stand. Because normally we don't see them needing to be reshimmed unless somebody's been in there before and gotten the shims out of order. It's really finicky using the shim tool, so I can see we're being all the way back at number 6 with stuck for clearance. But I've never actually tried it to know for sure. If I'm picturing it correctly, you probably can get the tool in there. But the very, very back one on number 6 is going to be fun just because you're going to be basically working blind trying to get it out of there. And I'm trying to think where the diverter valve is. And I am going completely blank. I've only messed with it once. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank as to where the diverter valve is. And the Timothy with the mangled front diff fill plug, now nice and round. If it's in there tight enough that you got it rounded off, I really doubt an easy out would take it out. your best bet is to probably weld a nut onto it and then use that to turn it out. Either that, or you can use an air chisel and come in kind of tangent to the nut and work it around, or not nut, but the fill plug, and work it out that way. But that takes some finesse with the air hammer, so a weld on nut's probably the easiest way. Oh yeah, and I should say, yeah, with the hood off makes everything easier on the back of an 80 series. That's one of the first steps we do if we're doing anything in depth. And awesome that you're signed up for Fall Crawl. Yeah, I'm planning to get there Thursday evening, and I'll probably roll out Saturday morning or late Friday night. So I can get it home in time to run a 10K Saturday afternoon. And I've never even heard of OKI Telecom. What is that? I could Google, but I'm always afraid to open new windows while I'm doing chat. The service manual exactly. Otherwise, you run the risk of chipping the cam journals and screwing things up. It's not technically difficult, it's just a lot of steps that have to be done exactly as the manual says. And going from Moab to Houston in a 94, any advice? I would just, check all your fluids, check the belts, check wheel bearings for wobble, just general maintenance stuff. Other than that, have a good trip. And replacing CVs on 100 series for the first time. Any other parts, seals, washers that should be replaced? We generally use the front differential, or we change the front axle seals at the ends of the front diff when we've got the CVs out. Since the CVs slide into them, and when you're popping the CVs out, you run a risk of nicking them. It's a good idea to change the seals while you've got access to them. I think it's the driver's side one that has a certain depth it gets driven into, so pay attention to how far the seal was in the housing before you pull it out. Other than that, I can't think of anything else that you would need. Oh, you'll want some gear oil, because when you pull the axles out, you're going to lose some gear oil out the end of the housing. But I think that's it. Ah, gotcha. Yeah, I figured the telecom thing would be something with a cell phone link. Yeah, I've never seen one, so I haven't messed with it. I don't know if anybody else on here has. And to EP11, yeah, read the FSM a lot. In the head gasket video, in various parts of the head gasket video, I show pulling the cams. But the FSM is very helpful for following along because it'll give you the pictures of what all the timing marks and everything are supposed to look like. And awesome. Glad you were able to get the timing belt done, and glad the videos were helpful, and glad you got your kid off to school. I was never happy with the first two timing belt videos that we did with the engine in the truck. The audio on them was terrible. I figured while I had an engine out, it would be easier to do videos. I did not really answer the washer fluid squirting out back. I would guess that it's got to do with the diverter valve. There's a little valve, because there's only the one pump, and then the valve switches whether it goes to the windshield or the rear window. And for the life of me, I can't remember where that valve is. I feel like it's tucked into one of the front fenders. It's been so long since I messed with one, I don't remember where it is. Yeah, try it with the special tools before you pull the cams. When I've had to head out and had to reshim, the special tools have pissed me off enough that I've gone ahead and pulled the cams. But I've pulled the cams a gajillion times, so it's like second nature now. And yeah, I want to say that the diverter valve is tucked in to one of the pockets at like the rear of the fenders, like kind of where the power antenna is. I think it's shoved back in one of those holes, but I could be wrong. It's in the engine compartment, and for some reason I feel like it's on the driver's side, but I'm not positive. And yeah, we have a lot of books. There's like 2 or 3 more sets of books like this throughout the house. Oh, and cool, yeah. So it is over on the driver's side in the corner. Um, what spline is a 100 series front locker? I honestly don't know. I've always just gone to, I think it's arbusa.com, and there's like a vehicle guide section. You pull down your vehicle, and it'll list out all the part numbers for what fits, what fits each generation of truck. Um, and I always just look them up that way. Otherwise, just give Cruiser Outfitters a call, and I'm sure they can hook you up with a front locker. I want to say it's 27 spline, but I could just be pulling that out of nowhere and it not be accurate. Oh, that's not what I want. Button's wrong. How easy is it to adjust the height control sensor at each wheel? Um, I've never had to adjust a set. It looks like it's just a 10 or 12 millimeter nut, and you slide the height adjustment bracket up and down. Um, but I've never messed with having to adjust one. And I was totally wrong on the locker splines. According to the ARB website, it's a 30 spline, and the 100 series IFS front is an RD 131. Um, Dave, I've never used a Walker Y pipe and front cat. Usually the Walker stuff is pretty crappy. I would use the MagnaFlow stuff. We haven't had a problem out of them. Just make sure you use Toyota gaskets with it. And yes, the cam bolts are reusable. They get a really low torque, and it's very easy to strip them. I want to say it's like 10 or 15 foot-pounds. So just be real easy on them. Um, and best way to fix a slow rear window. Um, we've had good luck with Sill Glide. Get in there. I think it's something like that. Um, Lubing the tracks with Sill Glide seems to help free everything up and make the windows run more smoothly. Uh, Replacing the run rubbers can help as well. But I think the best improvement we've seen is just lubing them with Sill Glide, and it's just like a silicone rubber safe grease. And cars that I like. Of cruisers, my favorite is the 70 series. But that's probably just because we didn't get them here and I like things we can't have. Sweet. Good luck with the knuckle rebuild. Um, Hopefully you'll get the your local tech sorted properly, and he'll do an awesome job. It's not a super difficult job. It's just really messy. Oh yeah, I always forget about green crusties. because we hardly ever see that on like the A series and newer trucks. I know my old 4Runner, I had to take the switch apart a couple of times, and on my old Supra too, and put dabs of solder on the contacts to build them back up to get better connection. In just a sec, I'm going to go check on the dogs real quick. Yeah, one of our dogs had surgery yesterday, so I got to keep an eye on her to make sure she's not licking her sutures or doing anything she's not supposed to be doing. On front bearings, I'm assuming you're talking front wheel bearings. We just use, any name brand disc wheel bearing grease. I like the Mobile One stuff, just because it seems nice to pack. But I mean, any modern name brand wheel bearing, disc brake wheel bearing grease will be fine. And I don't think that'll be a problem with the reusing the cam bolts. They're not torque to yield or anything. Uh, yeah, just as long as you don't over torque them, you should be fine. We've seen several trucks where the head's been off a bunch of times and the cam bolts have been fine going back in. And yes, we've done the Harrop e-lockers in non-locker housings. Um, we've done a couple of them. I really like the Harrop options. They're, an easy install, uh, and it's an easy clean install. And my opinion on electric fans versus fan clutch. Electric fans almost never push the amount of air that a mechanical fan will. So the only time I really see electric fans as being a viable option is like when you're doing an engine swap and there's just no room to put a mechanical fan in. Because like 99% of the time, a properly functioning, fan and fan clutch combo is going to pull way more air than an electric one. Oh, that's a good call too. Um, with the failing motor and dead spots in the motor slowing it down. For some reason, luckily, we almost never have to do window motors. Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, Toyota designed the cooling systems, on the Land Cruisers, to work worldwide. Like, they've got them in the desert, they've got them, in cold weather. So properly functioning, everything should be, fully capable of handling, climate extremes without having to do modification to them. I don't think I'm gonna move to Malaysia, but it would be a cool place to come visit. Uh, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, that whole area is definitely on our travel list. both of us just don't like being on planes that long, so we haven't booked that long of a flight yet. It's looking like either Greece or Ecuador will be the next big trip. Joe, my wife's voting for Greece, and I'm voting for Ecuador. We'll see which one of us comes out on top of that. Um, you should never be using the red fluid straight. That always gets cut 50-50. Um, if you're running the red straight, that may actually be a problem because you need the 50% water on that to actually dissipate heat. Straight antifreeze on its own um, wouldn't it doesn't dissipate heat as well as the mix. Like the new pink stuff comes pre-mixed, but the red you've got to mix it 50-50 yourself. And how are we looking for the month of November as far as being booked? I am not entirely certain. Um, we have been running way behind lately because we've been having a ton of jobs that have gone from being big jobs to gigantic jobs. This won't leave. So we're running really far behind. Um, so I haven't looked that far out to see where we're at, but I'm pretty sure you're on my list. I just need to look and see where you are on the list. And yeah, it probably will be Greece. And I am not opposed to Greece. I think the history there would be really cool. Uh, I just like the adventure-y feeling of Latin America better than Europe. Although Portugal last spring was awesome. Um, I would definitely go back to Portugal in a heartbeat. Cool. And yeah, no problem. And if you look on the back of the long life coolant jugs, I think there's a chart, and it gives you your like average temperature range, and for like higher and lower than normal ranges, you mix it differently. But the standard to keep it happy for the broadest range is 50-50. And then Mario, I just got the new estimate request form that you shot over. So yeah, I will try to get that together in the next couple of days. What gear oil are we using for our diffs? For the most part, just, house brand 80-90 gear oil in a 5-gallon bucket. We go through so much at the shop that buying it in the quarts just doesn't make sense, so we just get the house brand stuff in the 5-gallon buckets. Um, a couple of them, a couple of front diffs and T cases call for 7590. So we get that in the quartz, and that usually ends up being Valvoline, since that's what the local parts house sells. But for just about everything, get 8090 in a 5-gallon bucket. And awesome Dave, hitting me with some extra monies from afar. Dave became a cool kid and moved down to Nashville. Yeah, Shady 80 is almost on the road. Got the exhaust back from the mandrel bending shop after prototyping, so I could put that back on and get it inspected, and then I can start driving it. And why not 8140 for gear oil? Because the manual specs out 8090 for most everything, so we just use what the manual says. I don't see any reason to run the heavier gear oil. And double cardan U-joints, do they wear out faster than single? Properly maintained, I haven't seen them wear out quicker. They seem to be, just as stout as single. They just handle angles differently. 14 volts engine running at the cigarette lighter is normal. Normal alternator charging is usually like 13.5 to 14.5. And it depends, it depends on what generation of 80 series, but the alternator's computer controlled, so the computer decides what it wants to see and turns the alternator on and off. But 13.2 driving down the road once the battery's charged up is fine. It'll usually push out more amperage like right after you start the truck to build the battery back up after running the starter, and then it'll taper it back to help with fuel mileage, and it'll lower the voltage some. So that's totally normal. Thank you, Stephen. Also awesome. You definitely didn't have to do that after toting 2 sets of my exhaust to Maryland and back to help out with the prototyping. I appreciate it. Ooh, and that was close. I was closing Windows on the laptop and almost shut down the broadcasting window. That would have been bad. And I just paused one of the other windows that I had open to monitor this, so hopefully that will that'll help out with the buffering. Yeah, well, I appreciate it. And it was cool seeing you at the swap meet. It sounds like you stayed quite a bit longer than I did. If I hadn't driven down with my dad, I probably would have hung out longer. But him and my brother and nephew wanted to do the gun show in Chantilly on the way home. So they were in a hurry to get out of the swap meet. I couldn't believe how much turnout there was. I haven't made it down in a couple of years. And I think last time I went, there was only like 20 or 30 trucks there. There was quite a few this year, and quite the diversity of trucks. I'm excited for fall crawl this year. It's been a while since it's been in Virginia. They'd moved it up to Pennsylvania for a while. And it's always a pain to try to get away from the shop when you've got to drive 4.5 hours up. But with it being in Winchester this year, I can get my jump there without much problem. Oh, and that's the other thing that I was going to say earlier that I totally forgot. Capital Land Cruiser Club is most likely having Tech Day down at my shop, I think October 19th. I need to move some things on my schedule to get that firmed up, but it looks like I'll be able to. So, October 19th is the Saturday. Let me look. Yeah, 19th. So anyway, yeah, October 19th, Capital Land Cruiser Club probably having Tech Day at the shop, which means like open house kind of atmosphere. So if anybody from the YouTube world is in the area and would also like to stop by, yeah, we'll be open on a Saturday, open house style. How do you adjust an e-brake on 100 series? There's two adjustments. The main adjustment is inside the rear rotors, and you jack the rear end up and you spin the rotor. There's like a little rubber plug in the rotor, and if you put it at 6 o'clock, you can look in with a flashlight and see a little adjuster star, and you click that with a little screwdriver, and you adjust it until the shoes are all the way out against the drum and you can't wiggle it, and then you back it off. I want to say it's 7 clicks, but I could be wrong. That's the main adjustment. If your cable is super stretched, there's also an adjustment at the handle itself, or the I think it's still a handle in 100. Anyway, at the cab end, either the handle or the kick pedal, there's an adjustment there, but I've never actually had to adjust that one on 100 series. Yeah, it'd be like a spoon, like doing a 40 series, except for instead of going in from the backing plate, you're actually going in from the rotor side through a small hole in the outside. And it can be a real pain in the ass to get the rotor lined up just right to get a good shot at the little star inside. But yeah, same idea as a 40, except much nicer because you're outside. You're not laying under the truck trying to fight with springs in your way. No problem. And yeah, like the brake spoon that would usually use like on a 40 or a 60 won't fit through the hole. We usually use the tool guys give out pocket screwdrivers every year for Christmas, and they're just little straight blade screwdrivers. Those are what we usually end up using. The hole in the rotor is probably 3/8 inch diameter. It's pretty small. Um, Brake light stays on the dash, even with the e-brake all the way down. I'm trying to think of how that goes together. Um, it's a little micro switch on the bottom of the handle. I can't say that I've ever adjusted one of those, and I'm not positive that it is adjustable. But if you pull up the little leather boot up off the e-brake handle, you'll see it down there, kind of in between the console and the seat. Um, and if there is an adjustment on it, it should be pretty straightforward. Cool, and no problem. The Tuesday chats are fun, and it's fun giving uh, back to the cruiser community. Because I learned everything I know from the old school mailing lists, and really early I Hate Mud. And I don't spend much time on the forums, so this is an easy way to help out and have fun at the club meeting. Whew, I need a nap. Oh, thanks, and thanks for tuning in. It's not tied in. Well, I guess technically in the circuit, it probably is somehow tied into that switch. So yeah, low brake fluid will make that switch stay, or will make that light stay lit on your dash. But usually when we've seen it, it's not an intermittent. It'll just stay on until you put brake fluid in. Of course, I guess if it's right on the line, it could be just enough that the float, you know, sometimes it's happy and sometimes it's not. So yeah, good call. Um, Also check your brake fluid because that light lights up when the brake fluid's low. How does the center lock work on an 80? Um, it's kind of like a little power window motor on the top of the T case, and it just gear drives a shift fork that slides a coupler back and forth and locks or unlocks um, the center differential. It's a bit more complicated than that because there's like travel switches and limit switches that are telling everything what's going on. Um, and then it runs through like a relay set and a little computer. But it's basically a power window motor that moves a clutch fork back and forth. Yeah, and then the part-time four-wheel drive conversion for the 80 series, uh, it just replaces the center differential with a spool. Um, I don't think you're ever going to get better fuel mileage. Well, you may get better gas mileage from doing the part-time conversion. I don't think you'll ever get a big enough improvement to pay off the parts and labor cost of doing the conversion. And part of what I like about the 80 series and the 100 series and the 200 series is their full-time four-wheel drive. They just seem to handle really well because of that. It's not a terribly difficult job. I mean, you pull the transfer case. You can do it in the truck, but it's a whole lot easier to do it with transfer case, like out of the truck, sitting on a bench, so that you can get all the sealer surfaces clean when you glue it back together. I'm trying to think. If it takes any weird press procedures to do just the spool. And I'm not recalling off the top of my head. I haven't done the part-time kit in one. I've had it apart. I've had them apart to do low-range gears, which essentially is the same job as putting the part-time kit in. But yeah, I don't know. I know people like to do the part-time four-wheel drive conversion. I'm a fan of the 80 series, the way it was designed with full-time four-wheel drive. And it kind of seems like disabling that is a step backwards. But that's just my opinion. There's other people that like doing that, so to each his own. It's like people delete the ABS on the 80 series, and I'm not sure why you would delete the ABS. Since it's a great feature, when it's working properly. Yeah, doing like the low range gears and doing a part-time conversion is basically the same procedure. Like you're gonna have the center differential out to either change the spool or to change the gear. So it's the same work. Yeah, I think in a Land Cruiser, aerodynamics and the fact that it's basically a tractor motor have a lot more to do with fuel economy than spinning the front axle. What if the engine is not turning at all after overheating? Any ideas known that I'm tearing down the engine? Um, Depending on how hot it got or why it got hot, um, you could have spun a crankshaft bearing, which will seize it and it won't spin over anymore. There's also the chance that if you had catastrophic head gasket failure, that you filled one or more of the cylinders full of fluid, like coolant, and it's hydrolocking the cylinder, and that'll keep it from turning over. And that one's pretty easy to figure out if you just pull all the spark plugs and it turns over and you've got a geyser of coolant, then you know the engine was hydrolocked. Um, if it still doesn't spin over, uh, then probably a crankshaft bearing. And I've always said that I've never seen an 80 series water pump go bad, and we do a ton of 80 series. Uh, and I've always said I never saw one go bad. And then my personal truck I had it sitting in the shop, and the water pump's leaking. So yeah, they do go bad, um, apparently, but it's super rare, at least as far as we've seen. Um, uh, but yeah, if the engine is locked, um, you're probably looking for another engine or for a rebuild, depending on what it is. Uh, you can still get the short block, like the block, pistons, crank, and all that jazz new from Toyota. So that's the way we generally do it. We've actually got one sitting in the shop now that we're getting ready to do. So we'll use, all new bottom end, new timing components, and then rebuild the head to save a little bit of money. But yeah, it can get costly, if the engine is actually seized. Yeah, and Joe's right. Vehicles just sitting kills them. Um, we get a lot of people like, oh yeah, I got this, super low mileage 80 series or whatever. It's just been sitting, and it needs every gasket and seal because it's just been sitting. Um, and yeah, it really depends on why it locked up as to what would be okay. Without tearing it down or at least getting it freed up, you're not gonna know. But if it all of a sudden locked up without like squealing, freaking, horrible noises, and it coincided with an overheat, you probably got a cylinder full of water. And depending on how long that cylinder sat full of water, it could be toast. We did one that apparently had been overheated in its past, and it overheated hot enough that the pistons actually shrunk when they went back to the right temperature. It was crazy. We pulled the head off, and the pistons were sloppy in the sloppy side to side in the bores. And I called our machinist, and he was like, "Yeah, if, aluminum pistons get really hot, they shrink." Um, and it had made the wear pattern in the bores really strange. But without digging into it, you're not gonna know for sure. And I'm gonna go ahead and jump off of here for the evening, so I can get dinner started and everything ready for when my wife gets home. But thank you to everybody that tuned in this evening. And if you haven't, please subscribe below. And if you really dig what we're doing on the channel, check out our Patreon link down in the description. The support is always very much appreciated. And I will catch you guys next Tuesday. Thanks again for tuning in.